Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chloe. I do social commentary, film reviews, TV show reviews type of content. And please let me know if you've watched my previous videos. Are you new to my channel? Let me know what you think of today's topic below. As usual, today I'm going to be talking about Queenie, which is a new Channel 4 show. And it was originally based on a book, and it has been converted into a 8-episode TV series. As usual, get my little Google summary of what the show is about. After a messy breakup with her long-term boyfriend, Queenie seeks comfort in all the wrong places and begins to realise she has to face the past head-on before she can rebuild. So, as usual, I like to just focus on the key themes or just elements of the show that stood out to me or what I found particularly notable. The first episode sets the tone in terms of who Queenie is, but also the difficulties currently taking place in her life. So, for example, the argument that she's having with Tom, how she's not really feeling fulfilled or where she wants to be in her career. She works at a newspaper, but she would like to try to do some writing rather than doing social media, and she's having a little issue sort of finding her footing in that area. There's a little bit of humour, but then also like blunt honesty in terms of Queenie's thoughts, which narrate the entire show. And straight away, we're faced with Black women's experiences in the healthcare system. Yay! And when Queenie is visiting the OBGYN, so that is the opening scene, the doctor is examining her, right? And it's painful. Queenie says, oh, that was actually quite painful. Like, that actually hurt. And the doctor says to her, I'm sure you're fine, strong girl like you. The racism in the medical field. Like, this whole idea that Black women can take more pain is very racist and sexist.
This is especially true for dark-skinned Black women in terms of being treated harsher in the healthcare system, which is colorism.
Like, it's like you have to sort of psych yourself up and you have to prepare yourself to be able to advocate for yourself, because there's always that undermining that you're going to face by the people that are meant to be caring for you. You have the doctor forgetting her name, and it's all very upsetting, obviously, because I rewatched it the second time. We know as an audience member that something is not quite right. We later find out that Queenie has had a miscarriage. And when you just analyse that scene, the way that the doctors all gather around and talk about the scan as Queenie's in the bed, as if she's not there, there's that dynamic of, as I said before, that lack of care, the way that Black women are treated in all institutions in society, right? Including the NHS, including healthcare. And I think something that really stood out to me about that scene is that she did not share with her Aunt Maggie what she's found out. We don't find out until later on that she's had a miscarriage. But there's that element straight away, which is a clear defining characteristic of Queenie's personality, is that she keeps a lot of things to herself. She keeps a lot of things inside, which is very relatable, because I feel like as Black women, it's rare that we have those spaces where people make us feel safe to open up to them. It's not that her family's not there, but there's always this element, I feel like, of a bit of judgment. You should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. That if your family member doesn't feel safe opening up to you, there's an element of where I feel like our elders need to reflect on that. When she's trying, she makes up like just a story of what the appointment was about. And Maggie was like, don't say vulgar words in public. And it's just like, your niece is trying to open up to you, even though she's not fully telling you what actually took place. You can see why she isn't from that scene, right? We don't find out until later on that Queenie's had a miscarriage, but she's going into office, she's got a pitch. And Rewatching a second time, I just thought, you should not be going into the office to pitch anything. You shouldn't even be in the office, period. I felt like that is something so stressful, so traumatic to go through on your own. You have these white doctors that are racist as hell. Let's just put it how it is. I'm sorry, not sugarcoating nothing. Constantly Queenie's thinking she's the issue, but she's not. It's how people around her are not making space for her, that don't understand her, that don't understand her needs. It's the people she has around her, from Tom, who I'm naming him, but really in my script I was, thinking of calling him white boy number 1, because there's white boy number 2 and there's boy number 3, and I don't think they're worthy of being named because of how they treat Queenie and overall just what they symbolize in terms of what I've taken away from the story. And I just kind of, because of the way that those white men are acting and moving in this series, I just kind of wanted to add a little bit of comedy element to it, but I am going to drag them. I've just got so much thoughts, but being young and black in the workplace, fitting into these British standards of things, white British ways of doing things, the unwritten rules, a lot of the time we have no idea how to navigate these spaces, and it's hard to find your voice. It's hard to find your place in the world, especially if you're not confident. It makes it more complicated. And I think that as a character, that is how Queenie is. And I can definitely relate to that, where it just feels like there's no mentorship. There's no, I know it's naive to expect that, but just looking back at it when I was in my early 20s, when you just feel like you've really been dragged through the mud, the career experiences I've had have all been a mess. Some people have been chilling, and that's just not been my experience. You could say that could link to the fact that I'm a black woman. You can say that could link to the fact that I'm working class. I actually think it's both, okay? Because I'm very much coming in not being prepared in a way that I feel that other people are, because of their class, because of their race, because of their gender, etc. And we all have different things in terms of our relationships to power that shapes how we experience the workplace as an institution. There's little bits and bobs throughout the series, some of her co-workers sort of sighing as they see her talking passionately, and it's what I would actually argue is microaggressions, because all Queenie is doing is expressing. Sometimes I term microaggressions, I'm like, basically racism, okay? Queenie is just constantly being belittled, being undermined, and she's just being herself. And that brings me on to my next theme. The problematic non-black partners and their families. So in this instance, we have the white boy and his family, white boy number 1, Tom, and how interracial relationships come with these other set of struggles, right? And I really wanted to talk about this because I feel like right now there's a lot of talk about how, white men are better for black women and da 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 da. I think it's really important that we do not put white men on a pedestal. And I think historically we can see why that is the case, but also present day we can see why that is the case. White men, in the way that they operate in our society, do what is best for them. And I feel that when you see a lot of these white boys, especially online, there's a sort of performativeness in the way that they pander to black women, and they know that they have the advantage in the dating world, in the world as a whole, let's be real. So I feel like that's part of what they get a kick out of when it comes to the people who are putting them on a pedestal. And they will disrespect you. They will mistreat you, right? And I also want to point out, by seeing or doing this narrative or framing things like, oh, white men are so much better than black men, right? As an attempt to escape the discrimination that we face in the dating world, are we not doing the same thing that black men do when they say that they prefer non-black women, right? And I'm talking about this from a very heteronormative perspective. And obviously in queer relationships, we know that this shows up also like in terms of like race and what people argue are racial preferences, but it is racism, it is racial discrimination and how it shows up in who people find attractive and who they do not find attractive. And we know that gender identity also plays a role there. There's quite well-known YouTubers like Kat Black that talks about this in terms of her experiences with cis Black men and how they, you know, put non-Black women on a pedestal.
If you look at a lot of the interactions taking place in Queenie in terms of the book and the TV series, there is a strong hatred of Black women in terms of how Queenie is being treated. You can see it. But light-skinned Black women, we are seen as closer to whiteness, we don't have the same experience, and we can't talk over or like act as if we have the same experiences of misogynoir and anti-Black woman hate, you know, our relationships to power. So that is important to mention, and I think I can't make this video without saying that society praises and prefers lighter skin, which impacts dating and society as a whole.
White men are men and they're also white. And we know how they operate in this world. So we should not overlook that, is effectively what I'm saying. It was Tom's mum's birthday. And during the day, you know, Queenie mentioned it. She's like, oh, I'm going to visit Tom's mom. It's her birthday. You know, we're going over for dinner. First episode, Tom and Queenie have an argument and she forgets the present. But Queenie, you had a miscarriage. Like, I find it so hard watching Queenie be so apologetic towards Tom when at the dinner table, your grandma is talking about if you had children, I must admit they would be lovely. Fetishization of mixed race kids. And really, it's eugenics, because it's this idea that making something less Black is more attractive, is the future of the human race, right? This whole kind of like, it's bettering. But unfortunately, when she's saying, oh, the colour would be milky coffee, and I hope she gets Tom's lovely straight nose, and Tom oh, just leave it. Just leave it. The typical British thing to do. Just leave it. Sorry, but if you want to date a Black woman, open up, speak up. And that's the conversation that takes place there, right? In terms of episode 1. And understandably, Queenie's like, this woman is a mess. This woman is a racist. And the fact that none of the family's challenging it, they're all just sitting there, including Tom. Racismo. Okay? So, long story short, basic ass Tom, who I really don't feel like Queenie should be even fretting over, to be honest, as I'm watching this series, says that they should take a break and that she's too much. And then she's like battling in her mind, you know, in terms of the voiceover, if she should tell him that she had a miscarriage, but she doesn't tell him. She goes to visit her friend. We're introduced to her friend who, I'm sorry, but always has her back, Cheske. Cheske, okay, I love Cheske. Very K-pop vibe, isn't it? But I love Cheske. Cheske, love. Because she actually has Queenie's back. There's even a bit where the friend says to Queenie, why don't you date a Black guy, right? But and I feel like that was a little bit of a weakness for me in the sense that it was never fully discussed. Things are not going great at work. They're taking a break from each other, Tom, White Boy 1, and Queenie. And I think that's the beginning of the domino effect in terms of a series of situations that Queenie is in, which with time she looks at differently. And also some of the results of those situations, particularly with White Boy 2 and White Boy 3, there's elements of it which are quite disturbing and also very frustrating, because it's just like Queenie can't catch a break. Like, I think it's a very relatable thing though, but it was painful to watch in the sense that she kept on texting Tom throughout the year. And I think there's a point, I think maybe episode 2, where he responds, "We're on a break, Queenie, like basically stop messaging me." And she just, when he does message in that occasion, I think also to Merry Christmas, I think she sends him Merry Christmas and he responds Merry Christmas or something like that. And she's always like hyper analyzing his text. So I'm just like, Queenie, Tom is not all that for this energy. And also it's not healthy, I think, to allow it to consume you to that level. She's at an engagement party with Darcy and she's sort of drunk, rambling at a party.
The femme presenting person who Queenie is talking to at the party basically says, "Why don't you go and join an app?" And I just felt like, you know, there's no other, as far as we know, LGBT plus people in the story in terms of it being a part of the story. So unfortunately, it just gave a tokenistic vibe. Can we have fully fleshed out LGBT plus characters, please?
But yeah, you cannot. The thing is, yeah, is what I really gained from this is that men will hang you out to dry, right? Do not center men in your life. To women who date men, and just, yeah, to women who date men, because I think a lot of this is about relationships. Do not center men in your life. You have white boy number 2, Ted, or whatever his name is. He's married, she did not know, they get together over Christmas in some of the later episodes. And one thing I noticed also, because struggling with a breakup, struggling with life overall, right? Queenie begins to drink a lot. There is a work celebration or work event where she drinks too much, she's drunk, and he drops her home. Later on in the year, it's then Christmas, and tell me why Ted is bringing champagne to the office to drink with Queenie. Like, that for me, I thought, like there's something off about you. And I just felt he had huge red flags in the sense that he sees that she's not 100% and still wants to engage with her, right? This I thought this before we even knew he was married with a baby on the way. But long story short, you know, the wife is doing some D&I training or whatever, doing some workshop, unconscious bias. And he gets Queenie suspended from work, making allegations that she has been like obsessed with him, maybe like inappropriate. And she can't be in the office. She can't go to work anymore. She's suspended. But it was very interesting. The D&I lady said, "Would have never thought she's your type." I don't trust these D&I people anyway. D&I professional. So white man number 2, white guy who is the friend's boyfriend. So she has a friend, South Asian friend from uni, whose name is Cassandra, and they both connected because they were both the only non-white people on the course. The guy who I find really disturbing in the sense that he was so violent with Queenie during intercourse that her vaginal walls were sort of torn, or like, yeah, that she was so damaged, right, that the OBGYN asks her if she's in an abusive relationship. That character sickens me. And there's even a bit where he comes over where she's like, she's more sensing like, these people are not good for me in my life, right? And he keeps trying to pressure her physically through words and physically, like, to sleep with him. She's like, no, like, nah. Episode 5, it boils over. Cassandra is having issues with white man number 2, whatever the heck his name is, and he has no boundaries, and he stayed over Queenie's house that time, which I just mentioned, in terms of like her saying no, and he was so drunk, so she just let him sleep in the room, and she went downstairs because he tried to come into the bedroom. And he's like shouting, like, he's shouting. I don't know if I can say this on TikTok, but he's shouting stuff. And the girl recognizes her man, this white guy. And she basically lashes out at Queenie, and she's like, it's not enough for you to fuck up your own life. You have to bring everyone else's with you. No wonder nobody wants you, Queenie. And I'm like, sorry, but I agree with Queenie, and I'm glad she did not forgive her in the end, because the fact that you're going that low, and I think with that girl, she always looked down on Queenie anyway. And I think I touched on that in terms of the theme of your environment, good friendships versus bad friendships. And I think that that's something in your 20s which you really understand, like how that toxic work environment could really bring down everything. It can like leak into your personal life. She's stressed. She goes to Tom, and he's with a white woman. No shock there. So after all of this just like hits, right, Queenie feels at rock bottom. But I actually think Queenie's not at rock bottom. She's just seeing the snakes. She's seeing these dynamics for what they are. And she's beginning that healing process to be free from them. And it's just like, you know, the way that men are socialized is very much to look out for themselves. And I just think seeing white men in that context of that hierarchy, this, you know, made up of multiple sort of identifiers, why would you see them as some kind of noble savior in the dating world, or just period? Like, it's very anti-black to push those perspectives. Episode 6, 7, the episode dedicated to showing the life of her family when they were young, right? And her mum moves on, or is in a relationship with a man called Rory, and he's abusive. You know, he's a key reason, I feel, which is why Queenie has so much shame. She, you know, that element of rejection, which the therapist points out later on, in terms of like not feeling valued, not feeling accepted, always feeling like she's the problem. That Rory is one of the people that have definitely pushed that, and the mom left her on her own to fix things with Rory. So she was a child and she was living alone. And that is the key reason, the big reveal in terms of why Queenie has that relationship with her mum that is very tense. It's like, oh, she's being so harsh to her mum. Like, it was hard to watch, but it makes sense why there is that tension once you find out. But there definitely was times where it was just like, Queenie, what's going on here? In terms of comedy, I thoroughly enjoyed seeing Cheske cuss out Ted, white boy number 2, I think his name is, or 2 or 3. Their names are irrelevant. That's why I'm calling them white boy number 2, white boy number 1, 3. But just for clarity, I'm just going to give a bit of the name so you have an idea. Because he's like, oh, I didn't mean it to go that way. You know, the one that got her suspended. I didn't mean for it to go that way. I was trying to protect my family. But yeah, I love that. So she's having a party, a housewarming for her new flat. She invites Tom by accident. I don't like Tom, white boy number 1. He comes, audacity to bring flowers. We later see the flowers in the bin. Perfect touch. I just like the way that there was no conversation shown, but the flowers were just in the bin. And I was like, perfect. So yeah, I feel like the way it ended, everything was in a neat bow. Queenie later invites her mum to the party, and you know they finally talk about how they're both feeling. They're on better terms. Frank and Queenie are on, you know, they're dating, but it's very much clear that Frank is happy to go at the pace that works for Queenie. He's very much like aware of how she's feeling and like just making sure that she's okay. Like, so the way that he talks to her is so different to how Tom talks to her. Totally different. all the snakes are left behind. So yeah, I'm going to get into some weaknesses quickly. And I felt like some of the performance by the actress that plays Queenie, just at certain bits, I was a bit confused in the sense that in the episode where she goes to therapy, which I believe is like episode 6 or 7, Queenie says to the therapist that she's quirky, loud. And I was just a bit confused because I'm like, Queenie doesn't really come across quirky or loud to me. And it, on the flip side, you could just argue that we're meant to feel that because she's someone that's struggling to find her footing good. And I enjoyed the cast overall. But that was just one thing that really, I think, kind of stood out to me a little bit because I thought, that didn't really come across to me. So, and I just felt like in terms of like Queenie's relationship with Black Man, I just kind of wanted to hear that conversation more in the show. I just feel like in the end, when it comes to Queenie, I just feel like I've just seen people enjoying it. I'm like, oh, it might not really be my cup of tea, but there was actually aspects of it that I did enjoy seeing, especially as, a South Londoner, someone that is Caribbean. But, the book I still will not be reading from what I've heard. And, there were bits where I felt like could have been stronger with the performance and with the writing. And I think it just really reflects the climate in terms of like what is being produced in the, or what is getting the green light. And then also I felt like I will admit, like, as a Black woman, some of it was hard viewing. Seeing her go through all of these, it was a lot. And sometimes I like to think about like, who is the audience? Who are we trying to engage? And it did make me think about the American literature film just a little bit. And I think that we always have to be critical of what we're consuming and the type of Black stories that people want to hear and what they don't. And I had to bring this up in the sense that this was the main reason I did not read the book initially, because the commentary that I heard around the book was of that criticism of that space, okay? So I did not read it initially because of that, but I did feel like there are positives to the series. There were things that I enjoyed watching it. Yeah, I think overall, like, it's with time and it's with watching it again. I didn't watch every... There was certain part I just can't watch when it comes to Queenie. I just could not watch that. But just seeing people coming away and having conversations about the show, I think that's also what swayed me to feel differently about Queenie. So yeah, that's basically my kind of conversation thoughts and things that stood out to me about Queenie as a series. If you've seen the show, please let me know what you think below.